Welcome to Haunted Hospitality, 7 stories told by spooky gingers. I'm Robin.
And I'm Zoe, and I have a story for you guys today. But first, Robin, how's life?
Life is good. I have exactly 2 things to tell you.
Okay.
One of them is that yesterday I started listening to a podcast called Spooky Science Sisters, and I like it. The premise is that they are, I think, for the most part, debunking spooky things that happen and
Mhm.
being like, here's the science behind it that can cause these experiences to happen. And I like it.
Okay.
I'll let you know how it goes. Then the other thing I wanted to say, and I wasn't initially planning to say this, and then during our break between episodes, I was thinking, you know what? I could say this. My plan to get a tattoo is starting to solidify
Ooh.
because, okay, my biggest fear, Zoe, not my big, I have a lot of fears. My biggest tattoo related fear is that I'm going to get something that is super meaningful to me in the moment. And then I will hate it quickly or hate it in general, okay? And think it's hokey or represents a side of me I don't like anymore or something like that.
Hmm.
And there was a time when it seemed like everybody in our friend group was getting tattoos in quick succession.
I mean,
You
there
and
was literally one time where I got in a car and went and got tattoos with two of our friends. Well, there was a third friend who joined us, but she did not get a tattoo.
Yes. There were many tattoo excursions, and I let that pass me by because I was, I wanted to make sure I liked what I was getting. But for the past 4 years, I have had a specific tattoo in mind.
Okay.
And the fact that I think I've reached my 4th year now, I am ready to say I am definitely getting this tattoo. Now I'm just thinking about fonts, placement, who, when.
Okay.
But it is solidifying. Can I tell you what it's going to be?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So it is a line in a poem by Christina Rossetti. The poem is called One Seaside Grave, and the line is, "So might I till the morn." And I don't know what it is, but it makes me happy every time I hear it. And the thing is, I think it can mean many different things. The meaning in the poem is actually quite bleak, but I respect it, and I like the way that I think it can mean a whole bunch of different things for me through my life.
Can you say it again?
So might I till the morn.
Okay. Okay.
It just makes me incredibly happy.
It sounds poetic.
It's from a poem.
At first, I thought you said "so my die till the morn," and I was like, "That makes
No,
zero
no,
sense."
it's So Might I Till the Morn, but I believe in the context of the poem, it is actually a dead person speaking like, yeah, I will also lay in my grave until the morning. But it's not copyrighted. I know the poem. Can I just tell you it
Go ahead.
verbatim?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's called One Seaside Grave. Unmindful of the roses, unmindful of the thorn, a reaper tired reposes among his gathered corn. So might I till the morn. Cold as the cold Decembers, past as the days that set, while only one remembers and all the rest forget, but one remembers yet. I just love it. And again, the meaning is kind of bleak, but there is hope in the poem.
Hmm.
And I love it. I love it. I want it on my body forever.
That's cute.
Thank you.
The
So
fact that
I'm
you
just
can recite the whole poem just shows that you've read it a million times, you know?
yes, I did. And I do know this poem. I know this line, but also I like it for the fact that it is so malleable almost of a meaning. Like it doesn't have to be me getting it just for the fact that I like the poem. It can be like the meaning is changeable. And I think what I was so scared with tattoos is that this one meaning might not be important to me in a long time, but for this one, it's something that can almost change with me as I grow. And I really love that.
That's cute.
Thank you. So anyway, that's just a little update. How's your life?
Well, I'm good. I'm heartwarmed now. But
Yay.
so I do want to, I know last episode I did a couple shout outs, but I do want to do another shout out. So you know Jean.
Jean.
Yes. So Jean was, well, is my karate coach. However, it wasn't until January 4th that he was officially awarded the title of sensei. So I
Congratulations.
did want to shout out and say congratulations, Jean. You are now sensei. Congratulations. I was able to go to the ribbon cutting ceremony of the new dojo of Jean's sensei at that award ceremony where like the mayor was and the chief of police was there
Wow.
and a camel was there. Um Jean was also awarded the title of sensei. So
I'm most thrilled about the camel, other than
yes.
Jean being awarded sensei.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It was very emotional though. Like I did tear up a couple times.
Aw.
It was very emotional. So, but yes, that was my weekend aside from also helping my mom pack and move and breaking myself in the process.
Okay.
Well, how about you? Wait, you already said your update.
No, I just
Never
did.
mind.
It's time for, actually, I have something ahead of the something spooky.
Okay.
And that is we got another review.
Oh, we got another review. That's right.
Yes. Yes. So this is a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts from SK1885. And they titled it Love It and said, very fun and informative podcast, exclamation point. I highly recommend it, 2 exclamation points.
Woo!
Thank you, SK1885. We aim to be both fun and informative.
Yes, actually, that is our exact aim.
Yeah, I can't think of 2 better adjectives.
Yeah, legitimately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, now we're getting into this something spooky. And Zoey, I texted you about this one. Usually we kind of keep our, now you're thinking about what it is and you can't remember. Usually we keep our something spookies or southern, unless it involves, hey, I'm making mint juleps, or hey, I'm making a Cafe du
Beignets?
Monde thing, beignets, then we usually keep it kind of hush-hush from each other. Except this time, I texted you specifically.
Yes.
I was like,
yes.
oh my gosh.
Yes,
Okay,
I do remember.
so here's what happened. Way back in yesteryear, literally last year, we had an episode partially on Brunel University. It was part of it was the 5th and final installment of our haunted college tour. There was
College
a palooza
Palooza.
in there. Thank you, Haunted College Palooza. And we featured Brunel University in one of them. And the big ghost of Brunel University is Agnes, who is known to be a nice ghost.
Mhm.
And I was really happy to end on Agnes. It was very interesting. But there was one story that was attributed to Agnes in the article I read that did not seem like Agnes because it was creepy. It was not necessarily benevolent, whatever was going on.
Mhm.
And you and I both commented, Zoe, I think, saying, we're not sure this is Agnes. We are very curious about this one. Well, the person who had that experience commented on our Instagram post for that original Brunel episode. And she said, I was the one who's happened to. There's actually more to it, and I have photos. And she and I actually had a phone conversation, and so she told me a lot more about her experience, and I will be sharing the photos on our Instagram. So if you're curious to see what we're talking about, you can go to our Instagram at Haunted Hospitality.
I actually haven't seen these photos either, so.
You have access to our messages.
Oh, yeah, but I haven't looked because I am afraid of marking them as read and then you not seeing them.
Oh, no, they're in there, they're read. I'm just going to go back and access them.
Okay.
But thank you, because that is very nice of you. So this is Elizabeth's story. She lived in a dorm at Brunel University. She actually pulled up a photo of the campus just so she could kind of explain to me how close it was to Pierce Auditorium. And it looks to me, because Agnes supposedly haunts Pierce Auditorium the most, and it looks to me like a lot of the buildings are kind of built out of one another. So like you could have a huge conglomerate that kind of forms a U of them, but the Pierce Auditorium is part of it. And you just kind of leave out of the back, I think, of the Pierce Auditorium. It connects you to a front building. And right beside that building, she had a corner dorm room.
Okay.
Things started going weird in her dorm room, in case you can't tell that this is a ghost story. I know, the shocker of it all. But for one, she would always hear running water. And so her bed was actually, the head of it was against the exterior wall
Mm-hmm.
because it is a corner room. And so it didn't really make sense that she'd be hearing running water there. It's an old building. So she said a pipe above her head was actually coming out of the wall, but she'd actually asked about it and they had said this is still water, which means it is just kind of a water resource for when we need to do the sprinklers. But she would hear the running water all the time. She said she would also hear it at night, and it would sound like rain in particular, to the point that she would get up from her bed, go to the window, look out, because she was surprised it was raining, and it would not be raining at all. Weird thing number one. Weird thing number two is that they had a closet in the dorm that they hardly ever touched, they hardly ever used. It was her and I think 2 to 3 other girls. They were all on the soccer team together there, and they had actually moved into the dorm room about a month before everybody else started coming into campus. So they had put that heavy box up in the closet shelf when they first moved in, and it had been 5 to 6 months, and all of a sudden it just flew off the top.
Wow.
Yeah, she told me, she was like, I can't really explain to you like how much we just didn't touch it. It was so weird for it to fall down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of, I think, it seems that was like one of the things she most held on to about the experience. And then, of course, we have the big thing, which was the thing you and I read about, or I read about and I told you in the Burnout University episode, but there's a lot more to it than that. So by the point that this experience she had in particular happened, her roommate had already seen weird things. In particular, she had sent me a comment that she had made on a paranormal website about it, and the roommate had apparently seen like a full-bodied apparition twice
Okay.
before this happened. And so she was already a little bit scared in her dorm room. She would Skype her boyfriend all the time because I don't think she wanted to be alone in there necessarily. So, and she would kind of just keep it open even when she was out of the room and then come back and talk to him like they would be doing their work or something and just chatting idly. So she had it open talking to him, and then she went to go get lunch and the computer was facing her bed. So she went out and she got lunch, and then she came back, and as soon as she shut the door, there was just a group of guys on the other end of the Skype session freaking out. And they were calling her name. And she went over there and she was like, what? And then her boyfriend told her, you have to leave the room immediately. Don't ask why. So she left the room immediately. And then he called her and he said, you just needed to get out of there. I thought you were there. I thought you were on the other side. For like the past 30 minutes, there was something else on the screen. And so I was looking down at my work. I was thinking it was you. I was just talking to you. And after a while, I realized that you weren't answering me back. So I looked up and it was a shadow. And the weird thing is the shadow kind of looked like her.
Ooh.
She like had long dark hair. It was as if like, and she sent me the photos of this. This is what we're going to post onto our Instagram. This is the shadow. You can look at it and see that if you had a face on it, which the shadow doesn't really have a face, if it did, it could easily be a young woman with dark hair. And so he was just seeing this thing. He said it was going back and forth. It was sitting on her bed. It was going back and forth, back and forth. And he kept wanting it to be her. And so he kept like saying her name, like Elizabeth, Elizabeth. And it was not responding. It was not responding at all. Eventually, you know, the other guys started crowding around. And he said, so it had been on the screen approximately, you're looking at them now, aren't you?
I am.
So it just pulled them up. It's creepy as all get out, isn't it?
That is so creepy.
It's creepy. Okay, her boyfriend said that, okay, it'd been on the screen, I think, about 30 minutes total. And, you know, the last part was about them trying to figure out, is this Elizabeth? We don't think it's Elizabeth. She came back in. They said the minute they heard the door open, it disappeared.
Oh.
It went away.
Oh my
And so when she get back over, that's when he was like, you have to get out of your dorm room right now. And, you know, nobody else was in the dorm room. None of her roommates were there. It was just her.
That's creepy.
That is creepy. That is the big thing that happened. And that is not like Agnes at all. So I asked her, I said, you know, so what made you think it was possibly Agnes? And she said, well, you know, I don't know. She said that the big two spirits at Burnout are supposedly this little boy named Red, and then
Uh-huh.
Agnes. So anything that happened was just going to be attributed to one of those ghosts. So
Right.
this seemed to be maybe a woman ghost. And I think that she had said that either her or her boyfriend, I don't have my notebook in front of me, but that either her or her boyfriend had thought it was like distinctly feminine.
Okay.
She was saying maybe it wasn't Agnes, but it was something. And she actually, I wrote this down. She said, whatever it was, it didn't want us there. She felt like this was being kind of hostile to them. So she tried to switch rooms, but the other living situation that would have been a possibility just wasn't a great one. So she put up a picture of Jesus by her bed. She went to priests. She asked them to bless the room. And she said this kind of happened in, I think, November, December.
Mm-hmm.
And she just ended up staying the following semester there as well and just stayed in the room, lived in it. The interesting thing, she said the only thing that happened at night was the sound of the rain.
Mm-hmm.
The rest happened during the daytime, which is not common.
No. I got
No.
like goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like, that's creepy.
It is creepy as all get out.
Go look on our Instagram to find that. Holy crap.
Oh yeah, you want to see the photos.
You
The
need
photos
to
are
see those
chilling.
photos. That's creepy.
Because like it's a figure. There is something on her bed and it has a head and a body.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can see like the shoulders up, you know?
Yeah. Oh. Oh, now I'm weirded out.
Anyway, that was a little update on Brunel University. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth.
That was I really appreciate you sharing that with us. That's a whole other dimension
Yeah.
to the story than we knew before.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. Well, you
I
heard
think I
it
just
here
blew your
first.
brain.
Yeah. You heard it here first on Haunted Hospitality.
Hey.
Hey.
All right. So, Zoe, you have a story for us today.
I do. It is handwritten due to my current situation not being able to type well. So I apologize if there's multiple scenes of me going, and that says, oh, that's what that says. Also, I got a lot of this information from the show 48 Hours.
48 hours. Wait, that's not a documentary.
It's like when, like, at the first 48, kind of, like, it talks
Oh,
about...
like a
the-
missing
this-
persons thing.
So this one isn't a missing persons thing. It's not the first 48. It's called 48 Hours. I don't understand why it's called 48 Hours, but it was talking about this case.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not here to judge it. I was wondering if it was
It's not
for a
missing
second I thought it
persons.
was like a fictional show because I know there's a show called 24 Hours.
Gotcha. No.
Yes.
So I'm going to tell you about Shayna Hubers. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
Okay. On October 12th, 2012, police emergency lines in Highland Heights, Kentucky, received a call from 21-year-old Shayna Hubers. She starts the call scrambled, sounds like she's hysterical, as much as I hate to use that term applied to women. But the first words she says on the call are, "Ma'am, I haven't, I might have, I killed my boyfriend in self-defense."
Okay.
And her voice is shaking. She sounds like she's panicking. She sounds like she's crying. So the operator tries to get the location where she is, and she stutters and panics, and she starts saying the address, but it's a condo, and she calls it an apartment, and she says the address of the condo, but then when the operator tries to say, okay, what apartment number, she just like starts repeating the address again and is panicking, and her voice gets higher in pitch and less understandable. She's very much panicking.
Yeah. And I can see, like, if you're panicking, your logic is not exactly there, so you wouldn't necessarily be able to think of another number. I can see repeating the number you just gave rather than understanding, oh wait, no, I need to give you something else.
Right. And then the operator said, "What did you kill him with?" And she replies, "A gun, a loaded gun in the house."
Okay.
The operator asks, "Where are you?" And she starts crying, and again her voice gets higher in pitch, and she says, "I'm standing about 10 feet from his dead body." And then she just falls into hysterics where she's sobbing, crying, screaming. A couple more quotes from that call. She says, "I'm not a murderer, ma'am. I just killed him in self-defense." She said that he had beat her and forced her out of the apartment, but then she went back in to grab her things and he drew the gun at her. And then she was able to take the gun from him and shot him instead. But then as the operator tried to get more information, she kind of like went back and started telling the story again. She said his height and his weight, and then she said her height and her weight, and he was much bigger than her. And she said that he threw her across the room onto the couch. And she even said, when the police get here, they'll see how far that is. And then she fell to the ground, then picked her up and threw her outside. That's when she went in, and again, she said that he grabbed the gun off the table, the loaded gun off the table, and pointed it at her, and then she took it from him, and then shot him. So
Okay.
the operator was like, "Well, you just said that he beat you and threw you around the room. Are you injured? Do you need an ambulance?" And she said, "No, I don't have any injuries." And the operator was like, "He just threw you around the room and you don't have any injuries." And she's like, "I'm fine. I don't have any injuries."
Okay.
So then the 911 operator asked Shayna how long ago she shot him. Shayna said, "I don't know, 10, maybe 15 minutes ago. No, not even that long." And again, she's crying hysteric. And the operator said, 15 minutes ago? And there's like a pause, and then she goes, "Yeah." So I don't know if that was just her brain's not working, and so she's just agreed to go on with, like, just move on with the question. But so her initial statement was 10 to 15 minutes ago. No, not even that long. And then the operator said 15 minutes ago, and she said yes.
Okay.
So when police arrived, they immediately put her in handcuffs, obviously, because she shot someone. And they discovered that Ryan had been shot 6 times. Ryan being Ryan Carter Poston, the man she shot.
Okay. So one thing I will say before we go forward about the injuries, if you're hot, if you have like that kind of adrenaline in you, it's very possible you wouldn't be able to know that you have injuries.
Right.
Or
yes.
wouldn't think that you would.
Yeah, and I'll go a little bit more into it. But no, that's definitely a valid point that some people get shot, some people get stabbed in the stomach and they don't realize until they see the blood. Like, so.
I mean, I was in a car accident and I didn't realize how badly my stomach hurt until it had been maybe 10 minutes later.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The victim was Ryan Carter Poston. He was 29 years old. He was actually a couple months shy of turning 30 because he turned 30 at the end of December, and this was the beginning of October. He worked as an attorney in Cincinnati, and others described him as smart, had a big heart, and he was hot.
Okay. Wait, let's say like you're asking this, let's say you're going up to this person's friend and he passed away, and then like the first thing they say is he was hot.
So that was actually a quote from this woman named Allie, who is, in full connotation of the word, his girl best friend.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm referring to when I say full connotation of the word? It's like, so there is a media trope, and it happens in real life too.
I've heard of guy best friend.
So it's the girl best friend of your boyfriend is someone who is too close to your boyfriend, but she insists that you're crazy because you're the one making it weird, and he's like a brother to you. But in reality, like, it feels like there's something going on between them.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
So in this documentary where she's talking to interviewers after he died, she's just like, he was so smart, he had such a big heart, and he was so hot. And I'm just like, Those wouldn't be the words I would pick to describe one of my male best friends after he dies.
It's very complimentary.
But anyway, I'll get more into that later. So they had met in 2011 when Ryan was 28 and Shayna was 19. Yeah.
All right. That flag is red.
Yeah. So Shayna was Facebook friends with his step cousin. And so she popped up.
Wait,
So she was.
I'm drawing the connections real quick.
So they were both Facebook friends with his step cousin. And
right.
so I guess she popped up on his recommended since they had a mutual friend. And he went onto her page and saw her spring break photos where she was posing in a bikini. And so he added her on Facebook and they started dating shortly after.
Okay.
And keep in mind, he's already working as an attorney at this point while she's going to school.
What year was this again?
2012.
Okay, I'm just trying to think of what Facebook etiquette was in 2012. Was it still the time when you could theoretically make friends on Facebook? Which is definitely not what it is for now.
I have no idea.
Okay, whenever anybody friend requests me who I don't know at all, I'm just, no. No, thank you. Even if you know people I know, I don't know you.
Right, yeah. But yes, so they began dating shortly after. They met on Facebook because he thought she was hot in her bikini photos, and she was 19 and he was 29. But their relationship was volatile and on again, off again. So this story has two sides to it, and I kind of told you this ahead of time, Robin. But basically, when it came to the trial, the defense was saying that Shayna was emotionally and physically abused by Ryan, and she had killed him in self-defense after he had kind of driven her to the brink.
So, what was she charged with?
She was charged with murder.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get to that, obviously. The defense said that she killed him in self-defense after he drew a gun on her, and he had emotionally, physically abused her in the past, and again on this night, and that she was... I think they were considering a defense of temporary insanity, but instead they went with the battered wife syndrome, which is kind of like you've had enough, like the straw that breaks the camel's back. You've been abused for so long that even though the incident that happened right before she lashes out may have seemed tame in comparison, it was just the last straw. And so that's what caused her to lash out.
Okay. I'm interested by that decision mostly because if somebody's aiming a gun at you, you would think you don't need... I mean, obviously it helps for establishing the character in the situation, but the gun on its own sounds important.
The problem is that she kind of changes her story a couple times.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So that's one side. The other side is that Shayna was a obsessive stalker who couldn't take no for an answer, and she murdered Ryan in a sense of, if I can't have him, no one can. So that's what the prosecution claimed. So since we already have most of the information that's kind of pro Shayna because it came from her 911 call, I'm going to start with what the defense said, and then I'll tell you a little bit of information about what the prosecution said. From the defense standpoint, Ryan's neighbor said that she thinks Ryan was playing mind games with Shayna, and Shayna had told her Ryan was emotionally abusive. The neighbor had actually a couple times after, because Ryan physically throwing Shayna out the door was something that has happened on multiple occasions. And there had been a couple times where the neighbor hearing them argue, had come out to make sure Shayna was okay. And usually Shayna's crying, she's a mess kind of thing. And there was a couple times where she just sat and talked with Shayna a little bit to make sure she was okay before Shayna went home.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, a direct quote from the neighbor, she would always tell me that Ryan would say she needed a boob job or a facelift and that she was fat or that she needed to lose some weight. Mm-hmm. So even though the reason they started dating was because he thought her spring break photos were hot, he was constantly telling her she wasn't good enough, essentially.
Okay.
And then the interviewer asked, if he kept doing that, why doesn't she just leave him? And that's never...
Neighbor that?
Yeah, he asked the neighbor that. And it's like, that is never the question you ask in a domestic violence situation, because that's what this is. Yeah. You never ask, why didn't she just leave? Because there's so much that goes into an emotional, abusive, and physically abusive relationship.
There's so many layers of manipulation.
Yeah, it makes it feel like you can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
So there were several times where people alluded to, well, she should have just left. She should have just left him behind. That I very much disliked in this show.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of women all the time who are in domestic violence situations, and it's hard to leave.
Exactly. Like, there's a psychology you can't understand unless you're in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that just made me mad. But anyway, the neighbor also said she picked up his laundry, she did his laundry, she took his dog out, she went and buy him food, she did everything for him. From the photos of inside his apartment was kind of a mess. And it really seemed like he didn't really keep up with his things. And according to the neighbor, she was basically mothering him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Again, she's 19 to 21 in this relationship, you know? Like, she shouldn't have to mother him. But after she was picked up by the police, they interrogated her. They called it an interview, but they really interrogated her. And it was a 2-hour and 40-minute interview. And I just wanted to tell you a couple quotes from the interview, because the interview was a little funky.
Mm-hmm.
The police officer asked what was his name pretty much the second she sat down, and she goes, "The man that I killed, Ryan Carter Poston." She said, "He pulled me by the ponytail of my hair," which again is just a little bit weird phrasing.
And you don't know, like, if there's pauses between the words, like, he pulled me by the ponytail of my hair, and
I actually watched the interview.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was like, he pulled me by the ponytail of my hair. That's how she said it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you go to jail, are you allowed to keep your phone? She asked that. She also asked at another point, if you go to jail, are you allowed to take showers, or do you just get really dirty? I knew he was violent. I knew he was crazy. I had my head banged into a few different things tonight. Picking me up and throwing me against the bookshelf and calling me a goddamned hillbilly. That was just something that she said. Like, there was no question. Like, she just started that sentence.
Okay.
I really loved him. She broke down sobbing multiple times. One time she was sitting in the corner of the room, kind of rocking. Other times she was just walking around while crying. Other times she was in the chair while crying. There was one time where there was a police officer who was in there, and the police officer wasn't talking to her. And she said, "Can I talk to you? Can I have someone to talk to?" And then she said, "He kept loaded guns in his house. He's pulled guns on me as jokes before." Yeah.
No, that's a manipulation tactic, if I've ever heard of one.
He literally kept loaded guns in every room of the condo.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit different. They said, "Okay, tell me what happened." And she was telling it like she was thrown and all of that. And then she says, "And I just picked up the gun in the middle of him doing something with his arm or saying something crazy, and I shot him." In the 911 call, she said she took the gun away from him.
Yeah.
But now in the interview, she said she picked it up off the table.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where it kind of hurts her a little. Well, you said one thing and now you're saying a different thing, and those are kind of two completely different things.
It does change the situation dramatically.
Yeah. And I think that's why they went with the battered wife syndrome, because she is now saying she just picked up the gun instead of taking it out of his hand.
Okay, okay.
And then she says she shoots him, and then she says he was lying face down on the table twitching, and so I knew he was going to die, and I walked around the table, and I think that's when I shot him in the head. She said he was still twitching, so she shot more times because she didn't want to watch him die.
Okay. So she's saying she did that one shot, and of course it's kind of a sudden thing, like obviously she's scared because she's been beaten a lot that night. Obviously the gun is supposedly within reaching distance of him.
Right.
So she shoots, and then when you realize, well, this is going to happen anyway.
She moved around, got closer, and shot him more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She asked for an attorney at the beginning, and then the officer said, "So I can't ask you any questions at all?" They cut out here, so I wasn't able to see how it segued from that. But basically, he kind of just distracted her from asking from an attorney, and then she just ended up talking and not asking for an attorney again.
Gotcha.
So I believe in that situation, the police officer should probably have just, like, been like, okay, left and gotten her attorney. I think that would have been the judicially correct thing to do, but that's not what happened.
I don't know if there's ways to get around procedure or anything, but, there is, the Miranda rights. You have a right to an attorney. You have the right to remain silent.
Yeah. But she never got her attorney until she had already talked for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And at that point, she had said so many things against herself that it was kind of like, well,
what could an attorney do?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. They said this line, and I was kind of, like, weirded out by this. But they said the officers were so uncomfortable with her inability to stop talking that they would find reasons to leave the room, and they would, like, tag out. So, like, one person would just be like, oh, I need to go do something, and then leave, and then force another police officer to go in there. So she didn't get interviewed by
what new police officers. Your whole thing is you're supposed to listen to this person, and if you keep tagging out, maybe you're gonna miss something that's a connection that you need to know. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, because apparently she just didn't stop talking. She just kept talking anytime anyone was in the room. Even when they weren't in the room, she just kept talking.
Okay. But I mean, they're investigating her.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're trying to interview her.
But they were like, oh, that's weird. I want to leave. So
I guess she's talking to them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, everybody responds to trauma in different ways, Yeah. And some people, maybe they just want to talk about what just happened to them,
Mm-hmm.
But
so are you saying that these are officers who are, like, randomly in the room with her? Who are, like, just doing something? Or are they there to ask her questions? That's what I don't get.
So I think initially they were supposed to be there to ask her questions because it was the interrogation room.
Mm-hmm.
But there was actually one point, how I said, can I talk to you? Can I have someone to talk to? She asked that of someone, and then they were like, oh, no, that's not what she asked. She asked, what are they going to do with me? That's what she said. She said, what are they going to do with me? And the police officer in the room was like, I don't know. I was just told to come in here and sit with you.
Okay.
So it's like, I don't think they were actually asking her any questions after the initial few. I think she just was talking.
Okay, this is making a little bit more sense. I thought you were saying that investigators just got tired of hearing her and so, like, would tag out asking her questions. I'm like, that's the stupidest investigative tactic I've ever heard. Okay.
Yeah. So after going through Ryan's Facebook messages, defense attorneys say that he was consumed by anger. 2 months before he died, he sent a PM to someone saying, I want to rig explosives to everything I see. The prosecutor said that he was going through an emotional time, but his rage was never directed at Shayna in those messages. But even days before his death, he sent a text to someone else saying he wanted to burn everything to rubble. And it's like, even though he doesn't say, I want to burn Shayna to rubble, abusers, when they're angry, take their anger out on the people they abuse.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a very weak argument of the prosecutor to be like, oh, but he never said anything about Shayna.
Mm-hmm.
So,
agreed.
The night before he died, Ryan brought Shayna to his father's place to watch the vice president debate when it was Obama going against Mitt Romney.
Okay.
But it's the vice president debate, so Joe Biden...
Biden against whoever Romney picked? I can't remember.
I don't know. He's so inconsequential. The night before she killed him, he brought her to his father's house to watch this with his father and his sibling, I think. And then they go back to his place and they get ready to go to bed at his place. And then he says, by the way, I don't want to see you this weekend. And he tries to break it up with her again as they're about to go to bed in the same bed. So then, like, Shayna called her mom, and Ryan woke up to Shayna and her mom sitting together on the couch. It was weird.
Okay.
Yeah. And her mom was like, she just wanted her mother. She's going through a tough time. And it's like, but in that situation, I would just leave and go to my mom. I wouldn't have my mom come to me. I don't know.
Does she have access to a car?
I believe so, yes. Because she shows up places.
Okay.
Yeah. Shayna's mother was also concerned about the guns. She said that there was a gun in every room, not locked up, and they were always loaded. Her mother said that he would occasionally pick up a gun and just shoot a book on the bookshelf multiple times, and when Shayna was in the apartment.
That is definitely a power move.
Yes.
It's like, it is threatening abuse without, it's like saying, like, I can abuse you. Always know that I can. It makes me think of, have you seen Maid?
I have not, no.
Maid, it's a Netflix series, just a little limited series, and it starts off with this main character leaving her partner because he didn't hit her, but he threw a plate, like, above her head, and the show really goes into how that is abuse in itself without necessarily being abuse to your body. It is emotional abuse.
Right.
And it can escalate.
Yes, so she would occasionally pick one up and just shoot it at the bookshelf.
He would.
He would, yes. Sorry. Okay. And that's not just hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually proven because they found several books with bullet holes. They found bullet holes in the bookshelves. And they found books with wood embedded in it from the bookshelves.
Wow.
So he literally kept unlocked, loaded guns all around the apartment. And yet his best friend who was interviewed, he was like, he was always careful in his handling of firearms. And he was a responsible gun owner.
Okay.
He was,
yeah.
Like, I know this is the man who died, and I should feel a little bit more sorry for him because he was killed by his girlfriend. Yeah. But you cannot use the words responsible gun owner to refer to this man.
Mm-hmm.
So Shayna believed that if she didn't make sure Ryan was dead after the first 2 shots, he would find a way to kill her. So,
I mean, that's likely true.
Yeah. That was her defense in shooting him again at the end. She was like, if he wasn't dead after I had already shot him, he would find a way to kill me, so I had to make sure he was dead.
Okay. I get the logic. I get how that could be thought. I also get how there's a million holes you can poke in that.
Yeah.
Because you can't really claim self-defense. Yeah, you can't. You can't really.
Yeah, I mean, it could be,
the argument is you can leave.
Yeah, that is technically the argument, but her belief at the time was if I leave, he would find a way to hurt me worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I mean, and who am I to be offering? I'm going to step back from offering my opinion. I don't have like
No, you're good.
credentials or anything.
Well, no, that's exactly what the prosecutor was saying, though, is after those first two shots, you could have left.
Yeah, it's hard to yeah, it's so messy. Okay.
Yeah, especially
That's my big takeaway from all this is it's so messy.
it is so messy because that is the end of the pro Shayna, and I'm about to tell you the pro Ryan information.
Okay.
So the prosecutor said that I have never met someone so desperate to tell her story to anyone who would listen, talking about Shayna. But again, she said if she was so scared, she could have walked out the door. So again, the fallacy of abused people can just leave if they don't want to be abused again.
Mm-hmm.
So in Ryan's Facebook messages to people leading up to, like, several months behind, just constantly, he said that she was possessive and crazy. He said that she's shown up unannounced multiple times and refused to leave, and said it was, quote, getting to be restraining order level of crazy, unquote. And he had said multiple times Shayna was literally probably the craziest effing person I have ever met. She almost scares me. So the girl best friend, Allie, who described him as hot, said that Shayna was incredibly possessive, claims that there was no way Ryan had a side to him that she didn't know about. He had no dark side or anything like that. Allie said that he was a fun-loving dork and that he would never have... I'm sorry, I just realized I forgot to say something. So the night Ryan died, which was the night after he had a date with Shayna, he had a date with Miss Ohio of 2012, Audrey Bolte. She was 23 at the time.
And that was the night he died?
Yes, he was supposed to meet her at 9 p.m. to get drinks. And so he was supposed to go on a date with her, and that's why he told Shayna that he didn't want to see her that weekend. Allie describes Shayna as possessive and crazy, but describes Audrey as the perfect match with Ryan. And so I don't know why they put that into the 48, but cool, they put that in.
All right.
And even though Ryan and Audrey hadn't really met yet, I mean, they had met, but not really, because they were about to go on their first date that weekend, Audrey actually showed up at trial to testify to his character.
I think that's just a weird choice from the prosecution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely odd. I was just like, I mean, I feel like she shouldn't really be in this story at all, other than he was going to go on a date with her, and that potentially could, if Shayna somehow found out about that date, that could have been the trigger that caused her to decide that's the night that she's going to kill him.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing against her. The police found it odd that she waited 15 minutes before calling the police between the shooting and calling the police.
Okay.
I do want to say again, it might not have been 15 minutes.
Yeah, because she was kind of iffy on the timestamp.
Yeah. And I can imagine you're not doing the best at tracking time.
Time can stretch in weird ways.
Yeah. I know I'm on the pro Ryan side, and I swear I'm not saying this just because I don't like domestic violence cases, obviously, but I think anybody would have a period of shock before they can even think of doing anything. You know?
Yeah.
I personally don't think it was weird, but I don't see this stuff every day, so maybe it's typically not that long. I don't know.
That could be very true.
Yeah. So there are a couple things in Shayna's interview that I purposely left out until I got to this section. So Shayna was sat down in the room, and they were like, hey, sit down. We have to go get some things situated, but here's a cup of water. Basically, we'll be right back. And she says, okay, thank you. Start sobbing. The second the door closes behind the police officer and she thinks she's alone in the room and not being recorded, she stops sobbing. She stops crying. It's like a switch. And then she starts going like this, like looking at her nails on one hand.
Okay.
I said this before we started recording, Robin, but like when I first started researching this, I was like, oh, it was obviously self-defense or the straw that broke the camel's back. Obviously, he was terrible to
Mm-hmm.
her, but it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So,
Is the prosecution arguing that this was premeditated?
yes, I'll get to it.
Okay.
When she was alone in the room, she also tapped on the recorder to make sure it was off. And it did show off, but the camera was still recording. So Shayna had a history when she was in high school. She did like songs, like she was in the theater, so she sang, she did dances and acting and all of that. And so when she was sure that the recorder was off, she began dancing around the interrogation room and she moved around while singing, "I did it, yep, I did it."
Is
And
that a song?
well, she was saying it in a sing-song way.
But that's not like,
A
I
song,
didn't miss
no.
the hit 2012
I did
record. I did
it.
it. Okay. Um, I saw on, I guess some person on YouTube, so this is obviously a very reputable source, some person on YouTube, was talking about how some people who were preparing to lie in investigative situations, when they thought they were alone, they would move their body a lot. So Jodi Arias, she did a handstand while she was alone. That person on YouTube who I can't remember, said that that was one of the ways people would release the excess adrenaline in your body that comes with lying about something of this magnitude.
Right, yeah. And I mean, she was moving kind of all over the place, and the way, like the number of cups that collect on the table and the number of times she takes her jacket off and puts it back on and takes it off and puts it back on, and just the amount of stuff she gets up to when there's no one else in the room, it makes you feel like you're watching a video of, like you're watching the highlight reel of an interview that took over maybe like 5 hours, 10 hours, you know? But
Mm,
it was only almost 3 hours. So it's like she's moving a lot for a short time period.
yeah.
And I wasn't able to see this clip. I don't doubt it's out there, but I did not see this clip. But according to Wikipedia, which has its own sources, she also said, "I'm such a great actress," when she was alone in the room.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
If that clip is out there, that's bad.
Very bad. Yes.
Okay.
100%. The police believed that she couldn't have loved him because when she shot him after the initial shot, so it was 2 shots to the face, he went down, was twitching, and then she moved around behind him, shot him in the back of the head, and then shot him 3 times in the back. The police said the fact that she shot him after the initial 2 shots to the face proved that she couldn't have loved him, because if she had loved him after she had initially shot him in the face, she would have tried to go and help him, or she would have immediately called 911.
Okay.
Again, I feel like that logic is flawed, and
I feel like it's hard to definitively say what any person would or wouldn't do based off of if they loved them or not.
yes,
I mean, messy,
messy.
messy.
Messy, especially since it would be one thing. I think I would be able to take the police's word for granted a little bit more if they hadn't already said, "Well, why didn't she just leave?" You know,
Hmm.
it seems like nobody in this case believed that she was being abused except for the neighbor.
Are they asking why she didn't just leave the relationship in general, or are they asking why that specific night,
The
if you
relationship.
thought you could get, okay,
Yeah.
'cause I can,
I mean,
I don't
they
know.
actually do say both.
Hmm.
They're talking about the relationship in general, but there was one point where the police chief was quoted saying, after those first 2 shots, there was nothing between her and the door.
Okay.
Yeah. So she couldn't have loved him because she continued shooting. And they said that instead of trying to help him or call 911, she had to kill him. Otherwise, quote, he would have had a story to tell. So that's why they believe she continued shooting.
Okay.
She knew after the first shot that he was going to die or have a very deformed face. She said, quote, "He's very vain and wants to get a nose job, just that kind of person. And I shot him right here." She gestures to the center of her face and then says, "I gave him the nose job he wanted," and then she laughs.
All right. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And then at one point she did say in the interview, "Part of me wanted to get my keys, get in my car, and leave. And because of that, she was considered a flight risk." She also sang while waiting on the police in the interrogation room. She hummed and started like mutter singing Amazing Grace.
Okay.
Yeah. So after the interrogation, she was charged with murder because the police claimed that shooting someone 6 times was not the actions of someone in fear for her life. It was the actions of someone who was very angry.
Okay.
So they went through Ryan's phone and they said for every one text that Ryan sent to Shayna, Shayna probably sent back 50. She would call his phone, and if he didn't answer, she would call his office, and if they didn't connect her to him, she would show up at his office. His coworker told him that he needed to put a final end to Shayna, go to the police, and change his locks, but he just smiled and said, "I got this." According to...
Were they still together at this point, or had they broken up?
They were on again, off again.
Okay.
He would break up with her and, like, physically throw her out of the apartment, and then she would continue to message him, continue to call him, and then they would start dating again for a few weeks or a few months, and then he would break it off with her again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that I think the neighbor said, or maybe it was her mom or something, but it was just like, why did he keep taking her back if he didn't want to be with her? But then his coworker was like, well, sometimes you get so tired of saying no that it's just easier to say yes.
Okay.
So I believe that she was emotionally abusive to him. Like, this was just not a healthy relationship at all.
Yeah, it sounds just unbelievably toxic where both people should really leave, but of course it's hard to see that from the inside, let alone do it.
Right, right. It's like she had an unhealthy obsession with him, and I think he had the power, like he had this power thing going on, as evidenced with the guns and all of that. And
the abuse that was documented by the neighbor.
Right.
Or at least reported on by the neighbor.
Yeah. According to the prosecutor, Ryan did not actually qualify for a restraining order under Kentucky law because they were not living together and they were not married. That's a law that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to be living with someone or married to someone to be able to get a restraining order. And maybe it's just like the type of restraining order, since it's a restraining order against a significant other. But I mean, like,
yeah, they should definitely add other things in there. That's so odd.
Yeah. And again, I mean, this happened in 2012, so I don't know if the law has changed since then, but Kentucky do better. So Ryan had told Shayna over text multiple times to leave him alone, but she would show up at his apartment unexpected. He texted a cousin saying, "She came to my house on Sunday morning and I literally had to pick her up and throw her into the hall." But then they got back together over the summer, and then he broke up with her again, and then they got back together a few weeks before he passed away. But then, of course, the day before she killed him, he was trying to break it off with her again and go on this date with the model. Or, I'm sorry, Miss Ohio. There was one time when they had broken up that she showed up at his condo. She had the keys to his condo. So she showed up, walked in, and he tried to get her to leave, but she would not leave. He actually had to leave and spend the night at his father's house to get away from her. Even though Shayna claims that she was thrown across the room that night, there wasn't any sign of a struggle at Ryan's place. So there wasn't anything knocked over, anything spilled onto the floor. And the place was messy, like I said before. So if she had bumped into a table, things would have gone... Like, it wasn't like there was no mess to knock over. there was a mess
Mm-hmm.
and it was not knocked over. Shayna admitted to releasing the safety of the gun, and the police chief claimed that was proof of premeditation because by releasing the safety, she made the decision that she was going to kill him.
Okay, so she released the safety of the...
Which he showed on camera. It was literally, you had to slide your thumb down before you could pull the trigger. So it was an action that that took maybe 1 second. But he said because she released the safety of the gun, the crime was premeditated, and that's why it's murder.
I feel like that's a stretch. I mean, I feel like there's other ways you could say that this was premeditated. I don't think doing the one thing to make it a 2-step process to shoot him would, in my opinion. That's what I think premeditated means.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's still heat of the moment. Because, I mean, she did want to hurt him. That was not ever an argument. She wanted to hurt him, I feel like.
Yeah.
His downstairs elderly neighbors actually heard the first 2 shots and thought they were firecrackers. But then they heard 4 more, and they knew they were bullets. But they did not hear any arguing prior to that, and they believe they would have heard arguing. I think I skipped over it. Yes, I accidentally skipped over it. Something that was on the pro Shayna side, which I kind of said was coming up. You know how we were talking about, like, not knowing she was injured because she was in shock or whatever?
Yeah.
So Shayna had photos taken of her after her arrest, and it did show light bruising on her back, her neck, her arms, her thighs, and her wrists.
Oh, okay. Well, that could have been what they were looking for. That could be proof that she was thrown around.
Right. And some of them did look older, while some of them looked newer. So,
okay.
Because you know how, like, bruises, the newer they are, like, the more purple they are, and then the older they are, they come, like, greenish yellow. So yes. There were some bright purple ones, and there were some greenish yellow ones.
Okay. So a pattern of abuse.
Yeah. So those are the 2 sides, the 2 arguments. And to wrap it up, on January 16th, 2013, Shayna pled not guilty to murder charges. Her trial began on April 13th, 2015. She was unable to meet her bail of $1.5 million, set so high because she was considered a flight risk, because she said she considered taking her keys and getting out of there.
Yeah.
So she was in jail while awaiting her trial. However, the 2 years that she spent in jail was applied to her sentence. So it's like time served. So prosecutors claimed that Ryan wanted to permanently end their relationship and that Shayna could not take no for an answer, so she killed him in cold blood. Defense argued that Ryan was habitually, emotionally, and physically abusive, and he had been taking his rage out on Shayna, and that she had acted in self-defense. On April 23rd, 2015, Shayna was found guilty of murder and recommended a 40-year sentence. So, in murder cases, at least in Kentucky, you are available for probate. Available for probate? Parole, not probate. First of all, you have the option of parole, there we go, at either 85% of your sentence or 20 years, whichever is less, if they decide to give you the option for parole. So, in this case, it would be the 20 years because that's less than 85%. But the defense argued that since she was a victim of domestic abuse, she should be able to be up for parole after serving only 20% of her sentence. Because apparently that's a law. Okay. However, the judge did not believe she was a victim of domestic abuse. And he actually wanted to give her a harsher sentence, but went with 40 years with the chance of parole after 20 years. In 2016, Shayna filed for an appeal, and it was granted on the grounds that one of the jurors in her original trial was actually a convicted felon. Apparently, the juror had failed to pay child support payments over 20 years prior, and he said he didn't remember pleading guilty and didn't realize that made him a felon. So in jury selection, he had said he was not a felon. But
so it was a technicality.
Yes. Kentucky law states that felons are not allowed to serve on juries, so she was given a new trial. Her new trial began in August 2018, However, she was found guilty again and sentenced to life imprisonment with a possibility for parole in 2032. So that was the original 20 years. Shayna is carrying out her life sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institutional for Women. It's an institution for women. And just side note right now, if you are currently suffering from domestic violence, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. You can text START to 88788, or you can go to thehotline.org and join a live chat. Just remember, your internet history cannot be completely erased, and please remain safe.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So that is the story.
Thank you for sharing that, Zoey. Yeah, like I said, I hadn't heard of that before. To me, I don't think I could begin to try to figure out what actually happened that night. I really have no idea. It sounds like they were both in a really awful situation. Mm-hmm. And it ended in a really, really horrible way. And I'm sorry that happened to either of them. And, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, Ryan is very clearly a victim in the situation because he was literally murdered. Like, it's cut and dry, he was murdered. However,
it's cut and dry, he was killed. Murder has a whole bunch of...
I would say even in self-defense, wouldn't it be considered murder?
I don't think it's considered murder if it's in self-defense.
Okay. Well, he was killed. He was killed. His life was ended unnaturally. So he is very much a victim. However, I do believe Shayna was also a victim. And I believe that the system she was in did not see her as a victim, and so they probably judged her a little too harshly.
The fact that the judge said that she wasn't a victim of domestic abuse is very interesting. I mean, interesting as in I don't agree with it, because, I mean, the neighbor specifically said he had literally thrown her out. Mm-hmm. In his text messages, he had said this. She had bruises all over. It sounds like he was very physically violent towards her.
Right. The gun thing.
That is abuse.
The
gun thing.
Don't forget about the gun thing.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened. I don't think anybody will probably ever know for sure what happened.
Because I do believe that Shayna was maybe not... I mean, I can't believe you can go through something like that and be completely mentally well. And I do not believe she was mentally well. And because of that, I think in the literary world, we would call her unreliable narrator, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think we could possibly get the full story.
No, we couldn't. Well, thank you for sharing that story with us. If you liked today's episode, please like, subscribe, review, tell a friendo, and go to our Patreon if you're interested. Patreon.com/Haunted Hospitality. For $3 a month, you get an extra bonus episode every month.
On the 13th, because we're spooky.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we are.
And if you want to see my blog or my show sources, you can go... I always mess that up. You can go to hauntedhospitality.wordpress.com. Also, if you have your own spooky story, whether that be true crime or paranormal, you can write to us at hauntedhospitalitypodcast@gmail.com.
You can also send us a DM on any of our social channels. We are on Twitter at Haunted House. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Haunted Hospitality. We hope to see you there.
Stay spooky.